Okay. So now we're going to begin for the interview for the moral dilemma assignment. Have you experienced a moral dilemma in your life where making a decision was difficult?
Yes. It was about 9 years ago. My brother had cancer and it traveled into his liver. He was at stage 4. He went into the hospital for one thing and ended up being on life support within 3 days. And they had to call family in and keep him alive till we get there. And the dilemma came into who was going to make the formal announcement to have him pulled from life support.
Okay. What was going through your mind during that situation?
I didn't want my parents to have to make that decision because that was their only son. Also knowing that my father was also struggling with his cancer battle and what that would do to him to have to make that decision. So I also had to weigh our religious beliefs and put myself in my brother's shoes of what I would want done, and I didn't want him to suffer. So I made the decision to have him pulled off the life support.
Just to kind of clarify, this is why I'm going to ask this question. So what happened leading up to this situation, more in depth versus just broadly?
He got diagnosed with colon cancer, and within a month he went in and only was able to handle 1 round of chemo. His body couldn't take the chemo, and he ended up having flu-like symptoms. Went in on a Friday, and by Sunday his body was shutting down, his liver and everything, so they put him on life support in order to keep him alive long enough for a family to say their last goodbyes.
So during that situation, what options for the decision did you think that you had, which is the key word?
Basically, the doctors explained that we could either keep him on life support and prolong the inevitable, that death was on his doorsteps, or pull him off life support to speed up that process.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been in the same shoes as your brother?
Yes, I battled cancer years ago myself, breast cancer.
Okay. Now, knowing that, what were the pros and cons of each of your options?
I knew that cancer had won, that it was all throughout his body at that point. His liver was shutting down, that he wasn't going to walk out of the hospital. He was going to die. It was a matter of when. So my decision was to do the most humane thing and end the suffering by pulling him off life support.
Okay. Why did you think that was the best option?
Because there's no way he was going to get any better. His body was shutting down. Keeping him on life support was just prolonging it.
Throughout any time in that situation, could you relate to what he was going through, and did that affect your moral dilemma?
Yes, because when I spoke to him in his ear, I knew part of him could hear me, and he whipped his head around and had tears going down his face, that he knew he was dying. He just couldn't talk to any of us.
Okay. What came out of this moral dilemma?
That he died at, how old was he? 46 years old. He died of colon cancer so young that he still had a lot of things he wanted to do. But it was either pull the plug or just wait until his body totally shut down, which could have lingered on for weeks, where he only lasted 4 days after pulling him off life support.
Okay. Does this situation affect you to this day in any way?
No, because I know I did the right thing.
Okay. Why do you think you did the right thing?
Because it was the most humane thing to do for a person, not make them suffer.
Okay. Well, I kind of already asked you that. Kind of going back to what I already asked you, sorry about that, about what came out of this dilemma, more broadly, how did it affect the family? Not you included, and also the family.
The family members that were there thank me because they didn't have the courage or strength to do what needed to be done. So they thank me for doing the right thing in their mind.
You basically already answered this, but I'm just gonna ask it anyway. Were there bystanders like at all during like the situation? Obviously, like family, but like, were there a lot of like doctors involved in like the room that kind of
Yes.
swayed your decision?
No, the doctors were present and were trying to be very cautious of their words because they were trying to be sensitive of the family members that were basically mourning because they knew he was dying. After I made the decision for the family on behalf of my parents, because next to kin, the one doctor and the oncologist doctor came over and thanked me for doing it.
Were there any people that didn't agree with you, or did everyone basically
Everybody
agree?
agreed.
Okay. Did any person, anything that was said, did it at all affect your thinking?
No.
No? Okay. And you kind of already answered this, but I mean, I'm still going to ask. What values did you lean towards making this decision? Like, for example, like, was it more religious values, or was it more of just like upbringing and like social norms that like you've learned of like why you made the decision? Both? Can you explain both ways?
Bringing up religious, basically understanding that, we each have a start date and end date, and it's between you and God when that end date is, and his end date was very near. So I understood he was in God's hands, so it was okay to pull the plug. And then upbringing, you don't want anybody to suffer if they don't need to suffer.
Okay. So in that situation, you did not feel like you were playing God at all?
No.
Okay.
Just because they pulled him, gave the order to pull him off life support, he didn't die right there. He lasted a few more days.
Okay. Do you think that in terms of pulling like the plug that you acted morally just because of like from like a timing standpoint of like when he died, if you understand what I'm asking? Like, because he just didn't die like right away, like.
I sped up the process instead of delaying it even longer, because if he stayed on life support, he could have lasted a few more weeks, but at the end of the day, his body was shutting down and he was suffering.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.